RKB 106.9 FM, la ràdio que t'envolta.
It's a beautiful morning. I think I'll go outside for a while and just smile. Just taking some clean, fresh air. Oh, no sense in staying inside. If the weather's fine and you got the time, it's your chance to wake up and plan another brand new day. Either way, it's a beautiful morning.
Good morning, Barcelona, and welcome to Thursday in English Radio on RKB 106.9 FM. I'm Virgil, still and always, and welcome to another chapter of our new normal. Now, during the time of confinement, we all began to explore our inner spaces of our homes and ourselves. We discovered music, books, cooking, painting, and all sorts of self-improvement classes. Well, joining us today to talk about one of those activities, language learning, is a friend, former guest, and one of the, should we say, active parts of the Belfort Language Centre here in Barcelona. Welcome to the show, Fleur.
Hi, Virgil, and thank you for having me here today.
Well, it's my pleasure. I think, we look at many things, all of the big ideas and entrepreneurial startup items seem to stem from seeing a problem or addressing a need. What was your inspiration for, being part of Belfort?
Mm-hmm, so true. And both seeing a problem as addressing a need would apply, because Belfort started in 2012 out of a need. The complete lack of actually being able to speak English after years of English classes. And this happens a lot in Spain. In my opinion, many language centers and schools focus primarily on grammar and vocabulary, but do not make sentences that make sense in conversation with those words. They omit the speaking and the listening. So in Belfort, we saw the problem and found a solution.
Sounds great. We'll be back to talk more with our guest right after this.
We just talk. Can we just talk about where we're going?
problems like that you don't want to have. But I think it's key that your process emphasizes that.
Right, it's key of the learning
It is.
process to make mistakes.
But now you have to have at least a basic vocabulary level to begin
Where
with.
where does your vocabulary come from? Listening or reading? So older people can start with reading the vocabulary, but children, a lot of them, do read but don't like to read, and so they prefer listening. But I think it works best for both ages, any age, to listen. If you listen a lot, even if it's an hour before you go to bed, and just put on your headphones and listen to text. A lot of people, younger people, want to learn a language because of the text. They want to know what they are singing, what their songs are about, the lyrics,
Right,
what they are
right.
about. And older people, lately at least, a lot of women want to learn English because their daughter or son married an Englishman or an American, and they now have grandchildren that
right.
do not understand Spanish at all, and they want to communicate with their grandchildren. So they do have to learn another language. It's not just English; it's Polish as well,
Whatever, yeah.
or Russian, or German, or French. They want to communicate with their grandchildren, and that's the only way. So a lot of people, there are so many reasons, or the way you want. If you go on summer holidays every year to a place where all people speak Swedish, well, at least all the people you're interested in,
Yeah, you will
try to learn
Right.
Swedish, at least the sentences
Right.
that are
Very important, yeah.
easy to pick a nice Swedish girl up. Otherwise, it won't work.
Okay.
There are all sorts of reasons why you want to learn English, right? The weird thing is, about talking about girls again, girls tend to be very much more motivated in learning about the cultural part of the language of choice. So they're more interested in the whys, not just
Okay.
learning the words. They want to go beyond the language.
Well, I think, okay, that's different. I know that one of the things I love to do when I travel is I like to go to a place, a city, or whatever, and be able to, look at the architecture, look at the, historical sites, look at the, perspective of, how did the society get to where they are
It's their
today.
heritage.
Yeah,
It's part of their culture.
Yeah.
So if you want to understand a language, you need to understand the culture. You need to understand the people. And that at Belfort, they make that a very important part of the learning program. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll have to talk more with Fleur right after this. with Speak Low. Well, talking about speaking, one of the great postings that you've done, the quote that you have there from a Persian proverb, a new language is a new life.
Right.
Explain what you mean by that.
Well, that's so close to my heart because I really believe it that way. Because when you learn another language, you do not just learn new words and their meaning, but as a bonus you get some insight, call it a peep if you like, into a different culture, another way of life, of thinking, of eating and behaving. A whole new world opens up in front of you, of which you knew nothing about before, which I find extremely exciting. Because this discovery opens up the very soul of the language studied, an awareness that wasn't there before, and the knowledge that your way of life is not the only way. So yes, in a way you add a new life, a brand new experience. I'm very passionate about that way of learning.
Well, except that on balance, that makes a lot of sense, and it's reality, but it also presupposes that as an individual you have an openness to your life, so that these new stimuli actually become part of you. That,
of course,
but if you don't have that openness, if you're still blocked, and if you're still looking at grammar and syntax and vocabulary, then the learning the language is just another one of those things that you tick off.
Well, then it's very flat.
Yeah.
That's what we do in Belfort. We give dimension to a language. It's not just a flat language. It's not just words and meanings and grammar and vocabulary. No, it's alive. Words are alive. A language is alive.
Absolutely.
It changes all the time. It's as much alive as its people, right? So, and that's what we, as in Belfort, they only use native teachers. So they take you into their culture. They make you feel part of their culture because I know all of them and they're very empathetic. They don't make they make teaching fun and in an easy way. They make it easy, fun and interesting. I think they're doing a great job. That's why I got involved in the whole project, because I'm very passionate about the way they're teaching and the way they emphasize on all the things that I think are important.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, again, because again, you're also a coach.
I am a coach.
So again, you
a certified coach
are obviously empathetic with that, and so you'll be able to help people open themselves up in whatever way they can.
Of course, yeah.
So again, using language as a way of opening themselves up to their lives, I think is also important.
And see it in another way. And when you get to know another culture and you understand other people's thinking, behaving, and acting, you get to see them in another way. It's not just them anymore.
Right.
They become part of you, and you become part of them. So you're open. When you open up, life does change, and you get another life.
That's true.
And there's not so much prejudice anymore.
Well,
right?
That's what Mark Twain said. Travel is the best way of eliminating ignorance and bias.
Well, travel is wonderful, but as of now, we cannot travel. But there's so many other ways.
Right.
Because that's why in Belfort they started teaching online. They have this wonderful platform, that's Dexway. They started out with Zoom. When just one person can talk, it doesn't work. So they found this platform Dexway, which they use in Cambridge, and it's a wonderful form to interact on in video conference. It really works because you feel like you're in a classroom. You're all together. You get to see the others. They can talk to you directly. It's just one talking and you won't see anyone else. No, it's a good way to interact. Cool. Yeah, and they've started because we were Belfort was primary focused on English, because where they were teaching, it was in Barcelona. People just wanted to learn English. They weren't that much interested in other languages. They do have the options, but now online it's far easier. So we can teach other languages, especially Spanish. And you have to. English is the most spoken language in the world.
Right.
And then comes Chinese, but the third one is Spanish.
Yeah.
So Spanish is a very good language to learn, and we have great teachers at Belfort that will teach you Spanish online or at the center, whatever you prefer.
Excellent. Now, obviously here in Catalan, we see an emphasis on, in Barcelona, we see an emphasis on Catalan, the language. Now, as you said before, when you learn the language, you learn the country. But since there's such an emphasis on Catalan here, is that a problem?
No, it's not a problem at all. Catalan just helps because people here already are bilingual. So it's far easier for them to learn another language. I think it's great to be bilingual. It only helps.
It's true. It's very true. No, but again, it also brings up the politicization of language.
Well, I think politics and language don't really mix well. So I just keep to language.
Well,
and I think another language is always a treasure. If it's Spanish, if it's Catalan, or it's English, Dutch, German, you name it, it's a treasure. And they should be yeah.
Yeah, I agree with him. And now, given that, can government be doing more to help promote,
of course,
a broader...
Yes, of course. I think if they just change the way, like Netflix has changed that a lot. In Netflix, you can see any series or show or movie in its original language, and you have subtitles in any language as well. So you can change. You can already improve. It's improving a lot of listening, of getting used to the language. But national television doesn't have that still, and they're still synchronizing all shows and all movies, which is a pity.
Which is the thing, but I think it's interesting that Movistar has done with their TV programming. Even though they've dubbed it into Spanish or Catalan, you have the ability to switch back to the original language, and with or without subtitles. So that's a great feature.
That is an advantage, yeah.
Yeah, it's
definitely.
Really, I love it because I'll turn back to the original language, but then I'll at the same time I'll put in, say, Spanish subtitles, just to be able to also see did they really translate it properly.
Does that help you?
It has. I mean, it does. It helps me in terms of my conversational Spanish, in terms of saying, okay, this is how that is being used in terms of the English counterpart. So it's been good from that standpoint. But it's interesting to also look as with movies. When you see the subtitles versus what's been spoken, you say they didn't say that.
No, it's lost in translation still.
Yeah,
I know.
So
the most funny thing ever was I was watching a show from Agatha Christie, or a movie, I can't remember what it was exactly, but they were talking about a Welsh rabbit. Everyone that lives in the UK knows it's a sandwich. Right, a cheese sandwich. But it was translated as a
rabbit?
As a rabbit stew. And you saw them eating the sandwich. And I thought, please, everyone can see it's something wrong. I mean, wasn't the person that was translating seeing the show as well?
Right.
You should have seen it at least once if you translate.
Well, yeah, you should have. But again, that's a case where somebody probably gave them the script and just looked at
put some interest
writing,
in it,
and then they just said, "Oh, okay, it's a rabbit stew." So it's like didn't
they were eating a sandwich.
Yeah. Anyway, well, you're listening to English Radio Thursday on Radio Canal Barcelona 106.9 FM. We'll be back to talk more with Fleur right after this. was Cindy Bradley with Girl Talk. Now, appropriately enough, as we talked to you earlier, that girls have a greater facility to learn language than boys. Then how do you...
They don't have a greater facility. They just have a greater facility to speak, because they don't get bothered to embarrass themselves.
Okay. So then how do you...
They're willing to risk that.
How do you teach the boys versus girls? There's a different processes or different ways of doing it?
With a lot of empathy, I guess. At least at Belfort, it takes a lot of empathy, so boys don't feel ridiculous all the time when they need to speak. And of course, they don't know the language, so they make mistakes. And a teacher's job is to correct the mistakes. Not all the time, but most of the time. And normally they let them talking. They interact a lot. And afterwards he says, well, some of you could improve, and then they all go off after the words. But I'm not in class. I don't give classes. I'm not a teacher. So if anyone wants to find out, they should come to class. Which would be wonderful.
Do you offer an opportunity to come in and either have a practice class or something to learn how the process works? If I'm interested in improving my Spanish, and I wanted to come in and see what Belfort could do for me, what happens in terms of that process? In terms of an individual coming in looking to possibly take a class or become part of a course, what do they experience when they first come in?
A lot of interaction. They start learning, of course, by listening. They start speaking right from the beginning. They have a series of words they have to make sentences with, and then, as everyone, at least adults, know how to read, you just start with a little reading process, which you start explaining.
Okay. All right. So.
But as I said, I'm not a teacher. And I'm not doing their teaching. But that I know for sure that they do. They start with little things like that, and then a lot of other things before, except like if you want to travel, right? What do you need to travel? How do you travel?
Okay, so just
how do you travel?
Practical things.
Practical things. So you want to go to, let's say you want to go to Spain. How are you going to Spain? Where are you living? In America. How do you go to Spain?
Okay.
Well, tell me in Spanish how you go to Spain.
What
are you using?
Me voy en avión.
Avión. Well, you can say just a word, because you speak it, but a lot of people that start out just don't know the sentences yet. So they put all the words, avión, tren, barco, all the words that you are going to need, and then you can make little sentences with that. You can start out with that.
Well, I find that's true, because, I'm far from fluent.
Put it on the billboard, and then it makes sense.
Right, so, because again, what happens is that tenses of verbs are probably the most difficult things to explain in terms of language learning. But once you learn the nouns that you want to convey, you can just revert back to the simplest form of the present tense.
Of course, as long as it works for you.
Right, and then
an accent or mistakes just mean you're trying.
Right,
and that's a lot.
Right, absolutely.
The people that ridiculize those things are mostly the people that do not speak other languages.
Well, there was there was a political ad back in the States criticizing people who were anti-immigrant, and they said, well, they can't speak English. He said, well, if somebody speaks two languages, that kind of says that they have a pretty good mental capability.
It does.
So I think that's the thing. We started talking earlier and about the fear and the ridicule. Many people hold themselves back because of this fear and lack of it. Because I have friends, who say, "Well, I could never move, out of the country."
True.
Well, why not?
Right.
So it's a case where they set up artificial barriers to being able to live life.
Yeah, they're just make-believes, because it's really not there. They're just thoughts that shouldn't be kept.
Right.
Because everything is possible, and we can do almost everything, but you learn by mistakes. And the good thing, I think, at the classes in Belfort, they don't They make you feel very comfortable. They emphasize on the whole feel of the room, of the class, because of the teachers that are really nice, except from very experienced. They make you feel at home. They don't know, so no one in the class laughs if you make a mistake. And boys that are always want to be the best, and girls are usually a little bit better, because they don't care to risk themselves and embarrass themselves. So boys, if there are not too many, will start interacting as well.
Okay.
Just forget about all this.
Well, if anybody wants
Anyway,
to
boys have changed a lot, I think.
they've evolved.
They have, very much
They
so.
have evolved,
They
yes.
don't feel that ridiculous anymore, or they don't have this fear to embarrass themselves anymore, as older men may have.
Right. They discover their feminine sides.
Yeah, at least I see it with my grandchildren. My grandsons don't feel that embarrassed around girls as boys were in my time.
Right. I know. But I was going to say, if people wanted to find out more about Belfort, where can they find information?
Okay, then you can go to the page, the website, which is www.belfortlanguage.com.
Okay, BELFORT, language.
Right, .com.
Okay, perfect. And then you have also other things on Facebook or Twitter? Or
We have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have Instagram. We're on all these, and we have a little problem with Facebook right now, but we're solving this. Primarily, we're in Twitter and Instagram right now. Yeah.
All right, perfect. We'll be back to talk some more with Fleur right after this. Krug with an old Al Green song of Let's Stay Together. So we've been staying together here with my friend Fleur Hols, and we're talking about language and learning and all of that. We've talked a lot about what the system, government, business, society, should be doing to help us move forward. Why should individuals consider learning a new language?
Oh, I think it's very important to study another language. I would say even essential for your growth as a human being. It helps you understand other cultures and in other ways of life. So in a way, it prevents prejudice and even racism.
Hopefully.
Well, at least it makes you understand another culture, another way of life, other people's doing, being, living. If you get a little peep, as I said, or an insight in their way of life, and you try to understand them. Of course, I don't mean everybody gets to understand everything, but you try to understand them from where they are coming. Another language, another religion, another country, well, you name it.
Well, we look at racism, and we look at how countries confront the shibboleths of their past. We look at Germany, and they've come to me become an example of confronting the bad parts. They've confronted what their role was in World War II, the Holocaust and everything. They've faced up to it and had to come about it. When I was in Amsterdam a couple of years ago, I went to one of the museums. I discovered this book where they talked about the history of Holland, the Netherlands, in the slave trade.
Right.
And
we formed part of that.
Yeah. And so it was interesting to look at it. They confronted it. Published the book. It was a really great book. But yet they look at the U.S. and they still have not confronted the issue of slavery.
But let's put it this way: a lot of people excuse themselves, saying it's just business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. What it was. It was just business to them. They didn't get the slaves themselves. They didn't. They just transported them from one way to the other place. And they excused themselves, saying it's just business. It's just money. And we still do that today because horrible things are happening still today, and slaves still do exist.
Absolutely.
And actually, it's not I don't say the colored people that have had more slavery than others. Do you know which country has been slaves for the most time of their lives? So more than any other country in the world?
Tell me.
Which country would you think it would be?
I would have...
For ages and ages and ages.
Well, I think there are nations in Africa.
This is an African nation.
Okay. And then
it's European.
I was going to have to say then maybe it could have been the UK.
It's not the UK either. Well, it forms part of the UK today. It's Ireland. Ireland. Okay. The Irish have been slaves for more than 1,500 years.
Really?
There have been slaves taken out of Ireland for over 1,500 years, which is enormous. Nobody talks about it. We only feel sorry for, you should feel sorry for any kind of slave. Slavery should never exist. Every person or animal should be free, at least in spirit.
Right. And I think, again, you're right. If language is the key to that, then it becomes important that we know it.
That's the funny thing. Girls are much more inclined, or women are much more inclined to go after that in a language. They just don't stay with what's in it for me. Now I can talk business with other people in this language. They want to know everything that's behind the language, the people, the culture, the food. And they're taking their husbands and partners with them a lot of times. So you see that more and more, that people come to visit the country and want to have a food tour.
Right.
They want to have a culture tour. They want to have, they know about the people that are living there. The art, of course, and art is very personal too.
It is.
It's very connected to language. Everything is connected to language. So if you learn a language, you learn another life. You enter another life. You form part of this community. And we're all one. Oneness is the world. I mean, the universe, not just the world.
It's true.
We're all one, everything, alive or not alive. It doesn't even matter.
Well said, Fleur Hols. Well said. I'm glad you're on today. It's wonderful.
It's been my pleasure.
We haven't seen each other in too long.
Yeah.
Apart from bumping into her in the airport in Amsterdam.
That's been 2 years already.
That's been 2 years ago, and it was longer before that. Well, again, that's it for today. We're going to leave you with a song by John Dollander that kind of speaks to both education and sophistication in the city, called First Gymnopedie. Have a great one in Barcelona. We'll talk with you next week.
Bye-bye.